That's James's meal for today, with some of those fancy shiitake mushrooms.
Well, it's one of mine. I had a pretty fancy one earlier.
It was pretty much the same.
Yeah, I know.
And I put ham parts here, so you could make it a little bit different.
Well, there we go. Yeah.
But yeah.
No, earlier it was rice, but I put some oysters in the rice.
Oh, I see. Well, today
And,
it's this time.
yeah.
It's just the
Yeah, it looks similar.
sauerkraut
There's the
thing.
carrots there, so
Yeah.
and things like that. So that was the one thing that was different. And of course, it didn't make it quite different because oysters are. Well, I'm not a big fan of eating meat, even seafood.
Yeah.
I made the mistake of trying to eat lobster when I was suffering from nausea. When I was getting to that was instant nausea. So.
Yeah, and well, our dishes aren't clean. I didn't feel like washing them. Sometimes I get tired and I
You didn't
get
have a lot of
behind
sleep last
on
night,
things.
you said, right?
Yeah. But they looked clean enough for me.
They look plenty clean.
It's terrible.
No, it's not terrible. It's just you do what you can do. So it's not as though you have not been working today.
Yeah.
You've been. I don't know how many songs you've worked on today. It seems like a half dozen,
I don't think that. Maybe four.
maybe 4.
But
But you know, like the day is barely half over.
I know. But
It's
a
about
couple
2
of them
o'clock.
ended up sounding country.
I don't mind that.
And that wasn't
No.
what I intended. But anyway, that's okay. I was telling James earlier today, because we were hearing on the radio that thousands of Canadians are opening their homes to accommodate Ukrainian refugees, which, wow, yay Canadians, yay Canada. And so I was looking around my house going, oh my gosh, I really have to clean up, because if I'm going to house some Ukrainians, it needs to be a house. It needs to be a home. And it's such a mess, and I got depressed. People get depressed in the winter. Anyway, not as depressed as I'm sure the Ukrainians are. And so then I was thinking, well, they'd be happy to be anywhere. And then I was thinking, well, they would probably expect that Canadians would be better off than I am, and they wouldn't
Better off than
like
that.
my home. They'd be like, where's the computer? I'd be like, well, the library. And they'd be saying it in Ukrainian, and I don't know what they were saying anyway. But anyway, I don't know. I was thinking, well, they certainly wouldn't want to drink cabbage juice.
Yeah.
But
no one wants to drink cabbage juice. I better drink that now.
Some people would be looking at some of the meals I feed James and say, the Ukrainians have suffered enough. Do not feed them, Pauline.
I don't
It's just
suffer,
cruel.
but many people want meat.
Yeah. So I don't know. I was thinking about what can I do? But today I'm supposed to leave the details to God. I'm not supposed to worry about it. I'm supposed to leave the details to God. So we'll see.
Cabbage juice is a whole lot better than
For the last month, I've been praying for the Ukrainian people and their safety. Let's see, but I'm very happy though that so many Canadians have decided to open their homes to Ukrainian refugees. That's wonderful. And the radio, the reporter
CBC.
on the CBC, they were making out like this was a bad thing, without people being vetted to see if they were good homes or whatever, and the Ukrainians might be abused and whatever. And I was thinking, that doesn't sound right. I think the government is just maybe thinking, oh, people think that we're behind, and the government is behind on doing something about it. And now the public has decided, okay, well, that's it. If the government's not going to do it, they're going to do it themselves, which I think is amazing. Yay, Canada, that so many people would do that. And I don't know, the radio announcer, they were saying like it was a bad thing that people were doing this. Come on. This is amazing. It's amazing that Canadians are willing to open their homes up to total strangers from the Ukraine. That's amazing. Why would anybody suggest that that could be a bad thing?
Well, people should be vetted. Apparently, what's happening in places like Moldova, and this is just a few people, but they're doing human trafficking.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, with Ukrainians coming across the border.
Oh.
I don't want to single out Moldova because
I
the
don't think
majority of them would
that happens in Canada.
Okay.
I think Canadians are better. They wouldn't do that.
There are nasty people who've been let into Canada without proper vetting. And I first noticed it in the 80s. So it was some guy who was from Trieste. He'd be, what would he be? His name, I'm going to mention his name, Jarabica. It'd be Jarabica Pizza, probably more like Jarabica. He's supposed to be Italian.
Okay, well, we have a criminal justice system that if anything were to happen, then the people would be imprisoned. Rightfully so,
Okay.
if they did bad things to
The big trouble
Ukrainians.
with human trafficking is people get scared for their lives to expose these chimps who do it. I just want to stress that this guy had been let into Canada. He didn't know how to read. He's a garbage collector. He couldn't even drive. He couldn't drive a garbage truck. But he was saying in the mid-'80s he was the smartest guy 30 years ago. And I'm going, Bertrand Russell, maybe George Bernard Shaw. I've changed my mind to a large extent.
Yes,
George
you have
Bernard
told
Shaw.
me about this.
I know, I'm mentioning it to people there.
Oh, I see.
And it turned out it was Adolf Hitler, and second smartest was Benito Mussolini. So this guy was from Trieste, which really probably should belong to a place called Slovenia.
Okay,
so
so I see what you're saying. Some bad people have been let into
Some
Canada.
bad people have been let in, and a lot have been let in recently. And you just don't know which way they're going to swing. I'm not saying everyone who's been let in recently since 2011 are bad, but there's a large percentage of them that are, like sympathize with bad people from where they come from, and there'd be a fair number of them that would be actively bad. So that's since 2011, maybe you can figure out the area of the world that I'm talking about, and we just did not properly vet the folks that came in. I know because I've talked with them, and I know who they sympathize with and who they don't sympathize with. They do not sympathize, for example, with the United States, even though they've come into North America, and presumably some of them have made it into the United States. They hate the Russians, and they hate, but they're mentioning the same breath the Americans. Shameful, absolutely shameful. So what else were you going to talk about? What's that?
Maybe when they said Americans to you, they meant Trump.
No, they said Americans. I know the mindset where they're coming from. The people that they'd be supporting would have been heavily against the Americans and stuff like that. Long term against the Americans.
Okay. So you agree with the people on the radio that the people should be vetted before Ukrainians live with them?
It shouldn't.
They just need to get out of
it
Ukraine.
shouldn't be on the radio because it makes the Ukrainians seem bad. Oh, they're the bad people coming out of there. It shouldn't be on the radio. But the CBC has been doing this sort of stuff. They've been doing a lot of stuff that's intended to make the Ukrainians look bad. For example,
But that said it. Canadians look bad.
well,
The
they want to
Ukrainians would
make
be
it.
abused.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right. But yeah, but I don't know if I think they might be trying to discourage it. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, they have done stuff to make the Ukrainians look bad, and it would be intended. Down deep, they really, the CBCers sympathize with, they don't like NATO, they don't like America, United States, whatever you want to call it or don't want to call it. And so they were, it was all over the news, black people the Syrians having trouble getting out of the Ukraine. This was early, like first couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Just
that was
today,
shameful.
what we were hearing. So you got people saying, "Oh, they were afraid. They had to get out. They were afraid of the Russians, the racist Russians." You know.
Oh, so now they've switched their tunes to make the Russians seem like the racist ones. And
You
that's
know,
why
they were complaining about racism among Ukrainians and Poland. It was the same, part of the same thing. That's why they were desperate to get out, because the racist Russian. You don't run towards racists. You don't run towards racists. People are saying, "Oh, the Americans are racist." People are lining up to get into the United States. They're voting with their feet, and what they're saying to me is they don't believe, down in their guts, whatever they might say, the Americans are racist. Systemically or otherwise. No. They're running away from the Russians, or so they claim. That doesn't give, even if the Russians are somewhat racist, call them racially prejudiced. Because you see, the kids have got to get out. Ukrainian kids. Ukrainian women have got to get out. Ukrainian, at least the ones taking care
Well,
of kids.
I have a different view on that. I think that the announcers that are talking about the African people in the Ukraine that are desperate to get out are trying to make the African people look bad.
It's going to work that way.
Yeah, I think that's what they're actually trying to do, because they're trying to say, oh, well, they should be able to get out before children.
Well, yeah,
Right?
and old folks and sick people.
Yeah, and so that any way you look at it, it makes them look bad.
That makes them look very bad. And
so
not just
I
them,
think
the
they're
Syrians.
they're trying to make them look bad. That's why they're telling us.
Well,
It might be like 5 African people who are desperate to get out. And they've made a huge story about this, like, oh
Wow.
yeah, the African people are desperate to get out ahead of children.
50, 500, whatever it is. I don't know what they were thinking, playing that one up. I think they were trying to make the Ukrainians look bad, make the Russians look better. 'Cause
I don't
that's what the Russians have been saying. You know, the Ukrainians are fascists and Nazis, and they're there to liberate the good Ukrainians.
Yeah, well, it's terrible. I mean, the Russians, the news that we're hearing about now is there's so many war crimes. It's like
They were doing it
they
right
were
from the
talking
get-go.
about people. They were finding mass graves of Ukrainians that had been tied up and executed. Just
And the
civilians.
Ukrainians are saying that they are civilians.
Yeah. And,
Could have
well,
been soldiers, but hey, it's a war crime if
And
you
they're-
kill prisoners of war.
abducting people from the Ukraine and taking them as prisoners to Russia. I don't know what they're doing with them there.
Well, the Ukrainians are saying, as the Russians have been retreating from Kiev, this is just the last 24 hours, that they've been using Ukrainians as human shields. That's why they've been taking the Ukrainians. And what do you think the ages of the people that they've been using as human
Children.
shields? Children. You see, that's
Terrible.
why the blacks in the Ukraine, we Africans, and the Syrians did not have priority, and even now shouldn't have, as they're
Gotta get
still
the
trying to
children
get children and old folks and women, at least women taking care of children.
Yeah, but
And-
the elderly, I'm sure they would say, let the children go first.
Children first.
Yeah,
But
for
the
sure.
elderly before black students and before Syrian students.
But-
There was one black guy, they were saying, he was complaining about walking, I think it was 12 miles to get to the border. I've got 5 fractured vertebrae, and I've walked 10 miles with elevation. It took me 10 hours. It wouldn't have taken this guy 10 hours unless he had some sort of problem.
We do things like that on a
semi-regular
not
basis.
semi-regular
I think
basis in the
I
summer.
did 10 miles about a week ago.
Mm-hmm.
I was in pain the last 5 miles
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like that. I've got 5 fractured vertebrae. And I'm in pain all the time. Really, it's not bad pain, but it was fairly bad pain. It wasn't really, really biting, but it was bothering me every step I took, every breath I took, frankly. So they were playing that up on the CBC. You walked 12 miles? Wow, that's awful. Wow, okay. So, you old folks, they've got to get out before the students. The students can get out on their own, walking or whatever. Presumably they've got some sort of a park or something like that. And go it on your own. You do not have priority over people. I knew that as soon as the Russians were saying, even before, but particularly when they started saying, we're not opening up humanitarian escape routes out of the cities that are besieged, heading towards the Ukraine. We're opening them up into Russia. And the Ukrainians were going, no way.
Mm-hmm.
Because they knew what the Russians had in plan. How about you folks out there? All you Fogoshis and stuff like that. Did you realize that was going to happen? Of course not. You probably think and the Ukrainians could be making it up. I don't know, but there are some so-called independent observers that are
Mine's delicious.
saying that they are killing civilians. What was that?
Mine's delicious.
Yeah, that's good.
I hope yours is too. I just put apple cider vinegar and sesame oil on mine.
It's awesome.
Anyway, you were going to tell me about Syria and why. You were going to explain that, weren't you? Syria?
So what was I talking about? Oh, yeah. I think we got cut off. So what's happening there? What were the Russians doing there? So I think it might be about 20%, maybe even less than 20% of the people have been ruling Syria, even going back to the Cold War. They're called Alawites. They're a branch of the Shias. They tend to be more secular than almost any other Muslims you could find out there. And so they've had a relatively secular government. They're like the Baathists. They are Baathists. They're like Saddam Hussein. I was mentioning Saddam Hussein was representing 20% of, misrepresented 20% of the population of Iraq. That was the population that traditionally ruled over Iraq. This is when Iraq was governed by colonialists, settler colonialists, but more colonialists. Bad designation, imperialists, really. And, I'm not talking about the English. The English had that arrangement where the Sunnis ruled over the majority of people, Sunni Arabs, over the 20% of the people in Iraq that were Kurds, Sunnis, as I gather. But they tend to be, secular is not the proper word for it. They tend not to be really fundamentalist. So I gather the women tend not to wear head coverings or face coverings or something like that. So, and they are the natives there. Arabs are not, newsflash, Arabs are not native to Iraq. Got that straight? Do your research. The people that are native to there are called, in the northern part of Iraq, are called, outside of Kurdistan, those are Kurds. They used to be called, from what I can tell, Kuti or Guti. The people that are native to the northern part of Iraq are not just what are called Assyrians. And their religion is, here, I'll give you an example. The Tariq Aziz, I don't know if he was an Assyrian, but he belonged to this particular religion. Tariq is a Arab. But his real name is Johnny. I don't know if he's alive. Aziz means, it's Arabic for something like strong. But no, his first name's Johnny. So what religion do you think Johnny Aziz belonged to? Or Jack Aziz? Christian. The Assyrians tend to be Christians. Their empire went down 12 to 609. BC, they're the real natives. Arabic was not spoken there. until after Muhammad died. The Arabs took over there. They have no newsflash. They have no business being there, especially committing atrocities and war crimes on the Kurds. The Kurds are native to the area where they are located, at least in Iran and bordering Iran. Much of it. They've spilled over into the traditional Assyrian territory. Oh, it was inherited from the Brits inherited. They were there for 20 years, and you get all sorts of Fogoshis going, wow, like they changed the map forever. It's just awful what European white colonialism did. Wow, 20 years, that's amazing. Wow, like what the Fogoshis think imperialism could do, because the Ottomans were there for hundreds and hundreds of years, and that was their arrangement. You see, they were Sunnis, and they had the Sunni, and they went with the Arabs. I guess the Kurds were less tractable up in mountainous, hilly kind of areas. So they used them, and the Brits just to come along, like after 1920, after the fall of after the end of World War I, after 1918, they're going, okay, we'll just go with the status quo kind of thing, and they did. And then that's when Iraq got so-called independence and so-called freedom. It wasn't freedom, and it tended not to be independence. They were dependent on the Russians, the Soviets, as the Soviets styled themselves. They were really anti-Soviets. But anyway, because they didn't believe in democracy. Soviets are supposed to be a democratic. Soviets supposed to be a democratic kind of like almost like parliament's not a good word, but institution. And so what's happened in Syria? So that's a Ba'ath Party. 20% of the people dominating the other 80% in Iraq. Similar thing in Syria during the latter part of the Cold War, and now all the way up, 30 years plus after the Cold War ended, they've been dominating over the rest. The rest tend to be Arabs. There's some Kurds there, kind of in the northeastern part of Syria. But it's primarily Sunni Arabs, but it's Shia Alawite Arabs dominating over the rest. So what was Russia doing there? The Alawites tend to be on the coast up near Latakia and stuff like that. I think the Russians traditionally had 2 naval bases there, and I think they've been able to maintain them. They don't care a hoot about the Syrian people. Doesn't matter if they're Alawites, Sunni, Kurds. They don't give a flying flock. I said flock, but you know what I mean. And they just want to maintain those bases there, and they'll do it. It looks like pretty well any cost. So what they did was they took rebel bases. What I mean is not bases, military bases. It was like cities, and just flattened at least parts of them. Aleppo, Homs, Hama. Hama has been around. I study ancient history. It's one of the things I study. It's called in the Bible Hamath or Hamath. And the Assyrians stomped through there long time ago, multiple times, starting, I think it would be like 853 was, I think, the first time where we've got a record of them stomping around Hamath. And they kept on hammering, and I think they really hammered it out of existence. It was a state for a while, and a little bit more than a city-state, and it was Sargon II. So the first, in 853, it was Shalmaneser III, and when did, I think it would be 720 BC, Sargon II really hammered them. He was so successful, he went on from there, and he went on to meet the Egyptians in the present-day Gaza Strip, and hammered the Egyptians there. And of course, the conventional chronologists don't realize that they actually took over the northern part of Egypt as a result. If you control the Gaza Strip, you control Egypt if you want to. There's nothing stopping you. It's just you got to make sure you got enough water, and enough provisions to get you and your horses or your tanks, in modern day terms, across the Sinai. Along the coastal road there, and there's nothing to stop you. It's as flat as a pancake. Now there's a Suez Canal, but it's as flat as a pancake. You just got to make sure you can cross it. But back in ancient times, there was nothing like that there. It was just a depression. You just stomp in there. There's nothing to stop you. You get into the delta, and all that's stopping you is a few distributaries of the Nile. Again, you've just got to make sure that you get across those sorts of things. There's not steep banks or anything like that. So, they don't realize that when they beat the Egyptians in 720, what Sargon II says is, hey, I set up a trading post on the border. And they said, oh, okay, that was not Raphia. Yeah, Raphia, I guess. Kind of like in the halfway, bordering, getting into the Sinai and stuff. No. It was Tanis. Inside the border. Why would they set it up on the outside of the border? They'd beaten the Egyptian army. There was nothing to stop them. What? But what they say is, as for, what is it? Sipahe. And Sipah in Sumerian means shepherd. As for Sipahe, he ran off like a shepherd without his sheep. They thought it was a great joke, right? Ran off like a shepherd without his sheep. His sheep had been scattered, so they just went right into the delta, and they set up several Assyrian dynasties there. They played divide and conquer. But we'll do that on another broadcast. Have we got a little time to do Pokemon?
Oh, look. You have 2 minutes.
2 minutes, so I'll just mention I just finished this up today along with a book called Why Stalin? Or Why Lenin? Why Stalin? I didn't bring it along with me. But I'll be dealing with this in greater detail. I just finished it this morning. And here's another thing that I'm almost finished. Get ready.
You've been working on that one for a long time. It's been
I'm going to
tough
finish
for
it
you.
up today. I've only got 32 pages left to go. National bestseller with a new epilogue. Nahla Ayed. She's the one who does on CBC Radio Ideas, or as I call it, what's the big idea? And she's won all sorts of awards, more like getting shortlisted. Praise for 1,000 farewells. Shortlisted for the 2012 Governor General's Award. I don't like to call down sophomores. It's not sophomoric. It's freshman-oric. It's freshman-like. Even though she's got a master's degree. Long listed for the 2012 BC National Award for Canadian Nonfiction. This is largely nonfiction. It's stuff that she's experienced as a so-called journalist, but it's largely been in her head. A Globe and Mail top 100 book, presumably in Canada for 2012. And Amazon CA editors pick best books, book of 2012. A Quill Enquirer readers pick 2012. So there's some readers from Quill Enquirer. I don't know what that is, a literary journal or something like that. They picked it like one of their top picks. Wow, you guys have got no
Perhaps they didn't
freaking
actually read
taste.
it.
Well, that's what a lot of gauchistes are like. They don't really read stuff. They get on Facebook and find out what they're supposed to be thinking.
Yeah.
So tune in.